Hello, everybody. It's me, and I'm you, and this is
Two Guys, Same Person.
Well, big news coming out of Podcast Town. A lot of ideas have been running through our head. A lot of feedback from everybody that's been listening, strangers, friends, family. That's why here in episode 3, we wanted to share some news with you. Yeah, we do more than just talk to ourselves. We do music. We've been talking to people about bringing on guests, so hopefully you'll start, seeing some interviews and talking with people. But we wanted to announce right now the release of TGSP RADIO. Woo! That's right. All this back catalog of music that we've had over years of not knowing what to do with these projects. We're releasing them. It's on this same YouTube channel. It's just going to be its own kind of set away radio station. It's going to have some tracks up there. Not any talking unless, you've got some lyrical content, some instrumentals, short, long, whatever's musical that we want to get out there, we're going to do it. Yeah. So go check it out. It's its own playlist, TGSP Radio. But this is going to lead into today's topic, which is putting yourself out there. That's a big one. This has been something that you and I have struggled with for, what day is it? Almost 33 years now? Yeah. And, we've made tiny baby steps over the course of these 3 decades, releasing music, going into bands and playing bands in schools and just doing stuff, but not really taking the plunge and really putting it out there to say, this is what it is. This is what I've got. Yes. And we want to talk about that. So maybe, any of our listeners can perhaps break through that same barrier. Right. It's scary. It really is. There's going to be people that don't like what you do. And that's something that is often covered, I believe, in these types of episodes and podcasts and videos where people are gonna have to accept that not everybody's gonna like everything that you do, but when you're doing it for yourself, to get it out there, to say I'm gonna do this whether you like it or not, not in a legal sense, in art sense, then I'm just gonna do it. Yes. And an interesting point that I want to bring up is, I think the first person I ever heard say something about this was Dave Grohl, when he's talking about growing pains as an artist, where you're going to do some of that in public. You're going to learn these tricks of the trade and these mistakes, and you're going to grow into somebody who understands the industry. It's kind of a universal thing. You're going to grow into a skill or a job or your life, and you're going to get better at it, and people are going to notice a change. If this podcast continues, hopefully the graphics get even better, quality gets better, ideas get better, and you might be able to come back to this episode and say, wow, this sounds so rough compared to what we've got now. But you need to be able to start from somewhere, because if you don't lay down the foundation, you're never going to build your entire house. You're never going to build anything without starting. But let's talk about how it felt to be stuck in that for so long. You're being afraid to start, and kind of how we broke through that. Well, we've always been creating. We haven't always been releasing, but since I was a kid, playing on the piano, writing my own stuff, good or bad. Finally got gifted a Fostex 16-track digital recorder back in the early 2000s. Started making my stuff. I've got some old CDs, and they're just god awful, but it's the start of something. Slowly, I started getting more serious about music. Tried college, flunked out of that. Went through an entire life in between that and my second try at college here in Chicago, where I graduated with my composition degree. But even then, after I graduated, I went immediately into non-music and audio work. But I kept creating. I kept showing my friends, hey, I like this idea. What do you think? It's not finished yet. And I would get positive reactions, but I could never bring myself to come back to something that I didn't have, the gusto for. So there's my first question, I guess. When you show somebody something and they say, I love this, why don't you, the individual, then go back and finish it. I think it's a combination of things, but I think it all boils down to the way that I create. I'm off the cuff. I can come up with an idea, but I have a hard time kind of putting it into pencil and paper. I kind of feel like when you're a really great jazz soloist and improvisationalist, but then you're supposed to sit down and say, okay, write this out and give me the instructions and how did we do this and let's make this perfect. I just don't have that in me.
Right.
That's not how I function. At first I thought I was just being lazy, but I'm not the laziest person. I like when I'm motivated to do something, I do it, I hyper focus on it and I get it done. But it has to really mean something to me. Do things like deadlines help? When somebody else is imposing it on me, yes. When I'm at work, when I'm at school and it's, hey, this is due by this time or there's some sort of consequence, then absolutely that's a great motivator. I have a problem setting deadlines for myself because it's all made up. I am not paying myself yet. I haven't had a crazy following of any sort. But I think one begets the other. I don't think you're going to be able to set yourself a schedule before you start that forward momentum,
right?
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, and adversely,
You're not going to start that forward momentum if you don't kind of have a loose schedule. I'm going to create, then I'm going to release. I mean, it's 2 steps. It's very vague, but it's a schedule. Well, maybe schedule is the wrong word. Maybe, I'm stuck on the word momentum. You start the engine and then it's going and then it's on its scheduled timer. You've got the pistons go up and come down and everything's timed and scheduled, but it didn't start until you lit the fuse.
Yeah.
Ignition. So if we're gonna kind of apply this to more people than just us, do you have advice? Do you have more insights that might help somebody kind of break through this on their own? Well, I'm kind of hoping this whole thing is a big insight and advice fest where people can see that we just started. I just said, okay, I'm going to start a podcast and then I'm going to release some music on it. And now I'm finding that, okay, I can do an episode in an hour and put it together and throw it online. So how many can I do a day? Should I then have a video out a day, a song a day? What do you want? What are you going to do? So our momentum comes from finally figuring out what we want.
Yes.
And I think what you're saying is we want to get out there. Yeah, come hell or high water. Whether this skyrockets to some altered plane of existence where I'm a quadrillionaire, or if it never gets more than a couple views, whatever. I'm going to do this whether people listen to it or not, because I think it's a cool idea. It's therapeutic to the creative part of my brain, and I happen to be getting positive reactions from people, so I'm going to continue. Absolutely. To stress, we would continue whether we did or didn't get positive reactions. Things might change if we felt like reaching that specific audience, but at the core, I'm doing this because I want to. I'm doing this because this is the stuff that I would do and send to my friends. There's some skits that I think we're going to be releasing here in the next week or so that I made for my friends. I'm not going to spoil anything, but you'll see. Yeah, it's what we've been doing the whole time. Now we're just kind of putting it into a public space. So I guess as a final question here, I wanted to ask you, how did you figure out what you wanted? By talking to myself, literally here and in my brain at all times. I consider myself a person with value, and I have opinions and ideas, and rather than just sitting here and beating myself up and identifying myself as all the mistakes I've made, I objectively looked at myself and said, hey man, what are you into? And that led to me answering honestly, and then coming up with the idea to put it into a podcast form. I'm literally talking to myself right now.
What's up?
But it's a conversation that I'm having in my head, and it's a way to kind of show people you can have a conversation with yourself. Talking to yourself may sound crazy, but it's kind of important. There's a friend of mine who said many years ago, treat yourself well because you never know when you're going to need you. And that really helped me kind of start on this path of seeing myself from the outside perspective, as a stranger with context. So I just listened. Awesome. So I'm glad you did, because I've been talking to you for a very long time. But overarching, I believe if you have something that you want and you feel like there's a barrier in yourself getting in your way, try to remove yourself from yourself and see yourself as, like I said, a stranger with context. You know a lot about this person, but ask them questions. And you'll get honest answers. It's just you in there. Nobody's going to lie to you. You might be lying to yourself. I'm not a therapist. I can't help you with that. But you're going to know that you're lying to yourself usually. So break through whatever it is that's in your way. It's generally yourself. And then try. And then be okay with whatever it is, because you shouldn't try to go for the accolades and the riches and the glory. It might be something that would be cool to get, but it's not going to be organic. And unless you've got some crazy cool hookups in the industry, it's the best way to be, in my opinion. Our opinion. I'll second that for us. So let's wrap it up here. A quick reminder, TGSP Radio is live. Expect even more to come from us. We've got some guests on the way. We've got some ideas that are brewing. And we're really excited to take this journey with you. On our way out, this has been Two Guys, Same Person. Bye.